How'd you like to listen to .NET Rocks with no ads? Easy. Become a patron. For just $5 a month, you get access to a private RSS feed where all the shows have no ads. $20 a month will get you that and a special .NET Rocks patron mug. Sign up now at patreon.netrocks.com.
Hey, Carl and Richard here with your 2024 NDC schedule.
We'll be at as many NDC conferences as possible this year, and you should consider attending no matter what. The Copenhagen Developers Festival happens August 26th through the 30th. Tickets at cphdevfest.com.
NDC Porto is happening October 14th through the 18th. Tickets at ndcporto.com.
We'll see you there. We hope. Hey, welcome back to .NET Rocks, episode 1918. Where are we in history today, Richard?
End of World War I.
End of World War I. Wasn't that fun?
Beginning of the H1N1 pandemic flu.
Yes.
That will kill people for the next 4 years and is still around today.
Yay! I'm Carl Franklin. That's, of course, Richard Campbell. And we're here for episode 1918 with the guy who built Node, Ryan Dahl. We'll talk to him in a minute. But first, it's Better Know Framework.
Awesome.
Roll the music.
All right, man, what do you got?
So I looked for trending repos on GitHub, and I found this amazing app. I haven't used it yet, but it looks amazing. It's still in alpha. It's called Follow.
Oh, yeah.
And you remember RSS readers, right?
Oh.
Those were all the rage when blogs
The good
came
old
out.
days.
Yeah. Think of this as an RSS reader on steroids.
Oh, my.
So it's called Follow.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about allowing you to follow your favorite websites, blogs, social media accounts, podcasts, and notifications in one place. And so it also has AI to assist in operations, provides AI reports to highlight key information for your subscriptions, personal AI knowledge base built from your subscription, uses blockchain as an incentive mechanism for active users and outstanding creators. But more about that, you know, check out some of these pictures, right? So you can follow your favorite sites, like they have a picture of you following The Verge, of Twitter and Mastodon and all the socials. What is it? NASA astronomy pictures. So videos from YouTube. Just
What kind? Anything you might subscribe to. Huh?
anything you might subscribe to. Yeah.
That's interesting.
And so it's kind of like that. It's kind of the old RSS browser on steroids.
Yeah. Well, it's good to see. You know, it's not like we stopped needing it. It's just that when they shut down Google Reader, we're all heartbroken and we haven't gotten over it.
Right. So this is and I love this. You remember Trillion? You used Trillion, right?
Yes. I used Trillion back in the day.
So Trillion was like an instant messenger that went everywhere. And it was one.
Just try to consolidate all the clients, right? I mean, these days I have WhatsApp open and Signal open and Messenger open and Telegram and like save me.
Yeah, exactly. And there's no real way to do that now because everybody wants you to use their app so they can get your information and not their competitors. So this is for Windows, Mac OS, Linux, and the browser. There's going to be Android and iOS versions coming soon.
Cool.
So that's it. 1918.pwop.me. That's pwop.me. And that'll bring you right to there. Or you could just look for github.com/rssnext/follow. That's what I got, Richard. Who's talking to us?
Love it. So, you know, I was digging around a bit because we've talked about Node and other tech a few times, and I ran across a show from a while back. This is from show 1218, so 700 shows ago.
Wow.
That would be November of 2015 when we talked to Paul Mooney about microservice design, which is hilarious considering where we are right now with the conversations this past year about modular monoliths and that, you know, whole mindset. And so it was really a pleasure to sort of dig back into that and go, right, yeah, look at all these things we used to believe. And one of the comments in there is from Ryan Litvak. Again, this is from a few years ago. He said, I love the show. It's a topic very near and dear to my heart as I am knee deep into a 2+ year project that is completely changing the landscape of application development at my company. I think one of the really important concepts that Paul hit on was the idea of starting with something small and low risk. We have been taking a suite of applications that are all monolithic in nature and doing variations of the same thing and are starting to find the commonalities between them, extracting that into their own services and then to make that available. The idea being that in time, we have replicated enough of this functionality to start sunsetting some or all of the legacy platform. Oh man, Ryan, I hope you tell us how this went 8 years later, because that is the true Quixote-esque, like jousting at the windmill. I found the debate about JSON schema interesting. It is something we've recently started using. The application development environment is heavily .NET based until recently. We are adapting to Node.js and possibly Go 8 years ago. Wow. Until recently, we shared our message contracts as NuGet packages, which makes total sense if you're in the .NET world. Yeah. This is problematic as soon as you started venturing into other languages. JSON schema is a way to provide us to offer language agnostic message contracts that we shared across applications written in different languages. Because there's lots of other complaints around JSON schema. Like you can drive yourself crazy with this stuff, but platform agnostic, that's not something you're going to argue with. And make no mistake, I am still in regular therapy for the lasting trauma I experienced using with SOAP and WSDLs. But I think JSON schema can be used to define a contract then, and it does provide value. Thanks, and keep up all the great stuff. And that's from Ryan.
WS star.
Oh, God, yes. Yeah, but I just appreciate how relevant this entire conversation is 8 years later. The way we're building software right now and all of the same battles. And it just reminded me, like, it's not that everything new is old, or everything old is new again, but it's like we're still just trying to make software and trying to get stuff done. And we've been doing that the whole time. And I went and read JSON schema again because I haven't touched it in ages. And I'm going to include a show link. Just this was thoughtful and useful. And it's interesting to think about the newer ways, like GraphQL and so forth, that we've gone to from there. But yeah, there's lots to be said here. So Ryan, thank you so much for your comment. And a copy of Music to Code By is on its way to you. And if you'd like a copy of Music to Code By, write a comment on the website at .netrocks.com or on the Facebooks. We publish every show there. And if you comment there and I read it on the show, we'll send you a copy of Music to Code By.
I just noticed somebody bought the FLAC collection of Music to Code By, 21.
There you go.
21 25-minute tracks designed to help you stay in focus while you're writing code or doing anything.
And FLAC being the lossless format.
Yep. It's like Wave.
Because you didn't want to go Ogg Vorbis? What's up with you?
Well, yeah. FLAC is Wave quality, but half the size. So it's perfect for downloading. All right.
I don't know. I'm perfectly happy with my MP3s, honestly.
Yeah, that's the joke, right? Is that all these audio files are all about their great microphones and all their, processes for recording and editing and stuff. And in the end, you're making music for people who are going to listen on earbuds. No offense, Ryan, but you're going to listen to MP3s on earbuds.
Yeah,
and they really don't care.
Nope.
No,
it doesn't matter most of the time.
Doesn't matter.
I'm in the car
most of the time.
Come on,
right?
I got a good sound system in the car, but not that good.
There still are a few audiophiles who have their speakers set up and their CD quality stuff and whatever. Yeah. All right. Enough of that.
Okay.
Let's bring on Ryan Dahl. So Ryan Dahl is the creator of Node.js and its modern successor, Deno. That's D-E-N-O. Is it Deno or Deno? Deno. Well, first of all, on behalf of all developers everywhere, I'd like to thank you for inventing Node.js because you really changed the environment. You changed the whole scene of back-end development from, well, especially in our case, right? We were using Internet Information Server for most of this stuff. And as Richard likes to say, it's a Swiss Army knife with all the tools out. And you have to play whack-a-mole to patch it up with the stuff that you don't want. Whereas Node.js comes along and says, hey, this is just does one thing. It does it really well.
Well, be clear. It starts out doing nothing. You have to tell it to be allowed to do anything.
Yeah.
But that's good. You take out one blade at a time, only the ones you need.
And the influence that Node.js had throughout the industry was undeniable. So thank you from all of us to you.
Yeah, thanks. I'm continually surprised that Node is as big as it is. I'm very happy to have kind of stumbled upon the right idea that servers can be programmed very similarly to client-side JavaScript. You get a non-blocking servers, are structured in callbacks, as are kind of websites. A button has a click handler. A website has an on request, web server has an on request handler. And, putting those two ideas together, turned out to work really well. And I think in combination with the fact that, JavaScript is far and away the most popular language in the world, in some ways the default programming language, has
what was the line Hanselman used? I mean, maybe he was quoting someone else. It's like, it's the assembly language of the internet.
Yeah, that was Hanselman.
It's the English for programming languages, right? It's what everybody speaks.
Although you did seem to hit the perfect moment, like 2008, 2009, where the idea that JavaScript was a standalone language was still a bit novel. It was a scripting language for browsers, and suddenly it's like, wait, run on a server? What's that about?
Yeah.
But it was also at the time when the V8 engine, the Gecko, and what the heck was the Microsoft one? But they were all sort of dueling each other for features in the run up to HTML5. Like the evolution of JavaScript detonated right about then.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I was very much lucky to be playing with the right stuff at the right time. Right. I think, if it wasn't me, somebody else would have kind of put two and two together.
So we noticed that after 3 years, you kind of walked away from Node and started your own thing. So tell us the story of that.
So Node was, after a couple of years was very clearly on a good trajectory. It was very early for, I think, the large audience of people, but for kind of the inner circle of development, like it was very clear that we had hit on the right model. I had made a business arrangement with my employer, Joyent, to sell Node to them, whatever that means for an MIT licensed project.
Yeah, right.
But transfer them the trademark, let them run the website, basically allow them to be kind of the official sponsor of the project. Given those two things, I mean, the project was kind of well structured. There was a bunch of contributors. Things were moving along. I had been paid. I'm not the sort of, I like starting things. I like working on new stuff and kind of.
Yeah, I kind of figured that about you.
Maintaining stuff indefinitely is not necessarily the most exciting thing. So I handed over the reins to Isaac Schluter and stepped back from the project. And these days, Node is managed by a nonprofit foundation, and there's many contributors, and different companies kind of pay money to have engineers working on it. So despite kind of making this business arrangement back in the early 2010s, Node is still a kind of public domain software and well used
great.
And liked around the world.
And is still a critical piece of business infrastructure. I mean, it is critical.
I think every website uses Node.
Pretty much.
That's not really a stretch. Riverside, the thing we're on right now, Google.com, literally every website. Maybe Node is not serving Google. Node is certainly not serving Google.com, but somewhere in the process of creating that CSS or that HTML, the build process of doing stuff, it's inevitable that, it's the canonical runtime for JavaScript outside of the browser. And so is involved in all sorts of front end tooling.
It's always good to go poke at the GitHub repository for a project and say, how healthy is this? And I look down and it's like, they pushed a build an hour ago. Yeah, no, I think it's busy. I think it's going on.
All websites. It's not a stretch.
Yeah, all the time. And then, I don't know how you feel about JavaScript these days. Do you feel like it's stabler? The rate of changing it to me doesn't seem as extreme as it used to be.
Like the language spec itself, you mean? It's moving. I mean, that is what is so exciting about the web and JavaScript, is that there's just so much attention and energy being poured into it. The spec is pretty stable these days. Since ECMAScript modules were introduced in 2015, there's not like super huge radical changes, but things are changing all the time. The temporal API, a new kind of date manipulation API, for example, is becoming stable now. It still continues to evolve because there is such it's so deeply embedded in human infrastructure that there's just many thousands and thousands of people like trying to improve this kind of pretty crappy language. Like, to be honest, like I don't necessarily love JavaScript. It's just where we all are, and I think that's why I find it interesting to work in that space. It was
accidental success, kind of like Herman's Hermits.
Darn it, Brendan! You should have thought further ahead. What is that? 30 years ago now? Good Lord!
Yeah, and wasn't it written in a weekend in a hotel room or something like that?
When it was Oak. So you hand over the reins in 2012. We know Deno appears in 2018. So what were those 6 years like? Were you wandering the desert?
I went to work for Google for a time. I was unemployed for a time, just working on random projects, trying to create a new app. As I still kind of want to. I have a Pinterest clone better version of Pinterest, the social app that I've been working on.
Can we use follow for that? I don't know. That's just a crazy
get back to
question.
That someday. Yeah. But yeah, just kind of working on stuff, which is kind of my preferred mode of operation. Deno was one of those many projects that I've been working on, but kind of achieved a lot of attention, and I'm still working on it now, trying to see it through.
I remember the JS Conf where you did the 10 things I regret about NodeJS. Like, heck of a way to introduce some new ideas.
And those, I think some of those principles are not around in Deno anymore. We're just releasing Deno 2 here this month, and for example, I was complaining very much about package JSON and NPM modules, and the original demos of Deno were very simple without any support for NPM. We walked that back and had to be pretty pragmatic about stuff, because you just realize at some point that
the gravity
people need to pull in whatever, like the AWS SDK or gRPC, and there's just no way that you're going to rewrite like the AWS SDK. And having kind of backwards compatible, I think there's just some gravity to the NPM ecosystem. But nevertheless, Deno remains dedicated to leveling up JavaScript, and I for one believe that this language is not going to go away next year or 2 years from now, or maybe not ever. And so I think there's really a case to be made for building solid foundations for this language.
One thing I notice is that it supports WebAssembly.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Deno, like Node, is built on V8 from Chrome, and you can kind of think of Deno and Node as like different Linux distributions. They both use the same kernel, but they have kind of different code around it. V8 has fantastic. V8 is the best JavaScript VM in the world, and of course has all the cool features like WASM.
Neat.
Can you talk to us about the role of TypeScript in Deno? Just, is thinking about something more adjacent to the Microsoft community. Like, it's great to see it there.
Yeah. I think so a lot of people think of TypeScript as like a separate language from JavaScript. I think of it as like the evolution of JavaScript. This is where JavaScript is going, right? It is JavaScript with types. And it's become clear over the last, I don't know, 8 years or so, that like TypeScript is the canonical syntax for adding types to JavaScript. we have supported TypeScript in Deno from the outset. I guess it should also be said that, if you look at the amount of code on GitHub, for example, JavaScript, of course, is number one. Python is number two. TypeScript is number three. So, in some ways, like JavaScript has both the number one and number three spots. Yeah. So, I think that future versions of the JavaScript spec will actually have some version of type. Like, I feel like it will be standardized and spec'd out at some point. In fact, there's proposals in the works to have types as comments added to the spec so that browsers can actually understand TypeScript directly and just kind of strip out the types. Don't do, they wouldn't do any type checking, but they could strip it out and get the JavaScript out pretty quickly.
And we should be clear right now, for those who don't know, that TypeScript isn't a language that runs. It's a language that creates JavaScript that runs.
That's right.
So it isn't a replacement for JavaScript. It's a JavaScript generator. So I think what you're talking about now is adding TypeScript features to JavaScript, ECMAScript, right? That sort of do what TypeScript does. Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, there's you can think of it as there's two modes for TypeScript. There's one compiler pass that's super easy where you just strip out all the types and what's left is JavaScript, right? And you can implement this sort of thing like trivially. Then there's the type checking where it says, oh, this function, needs a string argument. Let's go make sure that the variable that you're passing to it is actually a string and give you an error if it's not. The type checking algorithm is wildly complicated and not something that you could re-implement. Deno actually does both of these things. What I'm talking about adding to the JavaScript spec would be type stripping. That's the trivial operation. Okay. Mm-hmm. Perhaps in the future, Chrome, you could use TypeScript directly in your HTML, and Chrome could understand that by stripping out the types and executing the JavaScript. But the type checking is something that you would do in CI, not at runtime.
Yeah, there's no reason to do it at the browser level. It should be done at the push, basically.
Yeah.
No, and you're right. The folks that write that kind of code to do type validation like that, they're different kind of humans. That's
Anders land.
Yeah, it's Anders land, and Luke Hoban and those guys, just crazy smart, but also it's almost like they've sacrificed a part of their brain to think in compiler passes. That's not a small thing to have to think that way.
Yeah.
And I mean, the people who write V8 for that matter, I mean, also compiler people, it's a different breed of programmer.
Yep.
Right.
And strangely enough, it's the thing they want to do too. You can't plug them into other projects either. They will go find another compiler to work on. That's what they love.
It's a specialization. For sure. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you seem to have a pattern too now, Ryan, because you keep building tools for us to make more reliable websites.
Yeah, I am definitely not a compiler person, even though, I interact with the V8 VM quite heavily or with the TypeScript compiler. I use those as tools. Mm-hmm. I would consider myself a server person. I know how to write servers and kind of use those programming languages to do this, IO juggling. How do you juggle 1,000 WebSocket connections in the most optimal way? And my mantra or goal, I guess, is to allow people to do that more easily, because in the past, pre-Node, it was a specialized skill to be able to say have a multiplayer web server that had a bunch of ongoing connections where everybody, write a chat server, an IRC server or something like that. And being able to open that up is kind of fun.
So when you started Node, at least, were you using WebSockets, or was this all just HTTP sockets?
Yeah, WebSockets did not exist back then.
WebSockets didn't exist. Yeah,
but long polling existed. So you could have an open HTTP request that kind of streamed out responses.
Yeah,
right. Yeah, transfer encoding streamed. You can just send more and more chunks down to the browser. Mm-hmm. And up in the other direction as well. You can just make a request and keep appending to the body.
I did, not claiming anything close to what you did, but I spent a lot of time back then, before Node really, working on socket-based servers that juggled multiple clients, and the problems with that, especially scaling and especially dealing with .NET garbage collection. Sometimes the sockets would get moved around, and so you had to pin them in memory, like just a whole bunch of plumbing that nobody even thinks about anymore. That's hard stuff.
Yeah, I think to a large extent, this is alleviated. But I think, doing this at larger scales is still kind of open questions that people are working on. So if you have a single server, single instance server, maybe you can handle 1,000 connections at once or so. But what do you do when you have 1 million connections, right? And how do you structure that? How do you do this in a serverless way? Because frankly, I'm still bullish that serverless is kind of the future of cloud.
Mm-hmm.
How do you do this at the edge? How do you there's kind of we've kind of moved on to larger scale problems, and those are not worked out yet definitively.
I'm interested to hear what you think about SignalR. I'll tell you my opinions of it. I think it's really good for some things, but the thing that it's missing, and it becomes quite obvious when you use it, is any kind of cache, And so if your client is not connected when the server sends you something, you miss it. It's gone, right? And I guess that's why messaging and all those things are the way they are. It's because, hey, I might go down and I might come back and I want to get all my messages.
I have zero experience with .NET.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Well, SignalR isn't just .NET. It's JavaScript as well. So, yeah. But it's an implementation of WebSockets, right? All right. Well, anyway, we can move on from that. But it was just, something that I was curious about.
I'm always jumpy about direct connections between a client and a server for longer than that's absolutely necessary. But I, cut my chops on scaling, where get in, get out, churn the resources as quickly as possible. As soon as you're doing any one-to-one relationships like that, you're going to run out of resources pretty fast. That being said, that real-time stuff's cool. The continuously animated dashboard, that kind of thing. It's just as long as you got the user count under control, you're fine.
Mm-hmm.
It's, what's the problem space you're working in? I think it's one of the challenges with web in general is there's so many things you can do with it. Thinking about any one pattern, you're probably wrong.
I think that's a truism. Yeah. It's exciting as well. I mean, you can do kind of anything with it. So everybody can be very creative.
Yeah. Just an experiment, go down different paths. The problem is applying a pattern suited to a high scaling technique to a highly interactive technique. And now you're fighting with it, or going highly interactive on something that needs to scale, and so on. Sounds
like we're opening up the airing of grievances for web technology here. Who wants to start?
Why don't we take the break first, and we can do the second half as grievances?
That sounds good. All right, we'll be right back after these very important messages. Do you have a complex .NET monolith you'd like to refactor to a microservices architecture? The Microservice Extractor for .NET tool visualizes your app and helps progressively extract code into microservices. Learn more at aws.amazon.com/modernize. And we're back. It's .NET Rocks. I'm Carl Franklin. That's Richard Campbell.
Hey.
And that's our friend Ryan Dahl, and the inventor of NodeJS. And just a reminder, if you don't want to hear these ads, you can sign up for Patreon. $5 a month will get you an ad-free RSS feed that you could probably use with Follow. I don't know. I'm just fascinated.
You're totally smitten now.
I'm totally fascinated. I downloaded it after this show. I'm going to run it. I'm going to see what it is. Anyway, we were talking about the airing of grievances of web technologies, which is a topic I suggested. We don't have to go down this road, but I'll start. That one of the things I don't like about modern web applications is, your site is half rendered, and then you see a button that's available, and you go to click on it, and just before you click, boom, it moves over, and another button you clicked on that you didn't intend to click on, which is going to call the fire department or something, right? And these aren't necessarily things that are bad that are built into the web that you must always have. But it, like my wife says, I blame the programmer. Stupid programmers. Somebody built this thing. Yeah. Anybody got a comment or a grievance?
I mean, I think, that style of bug is something that ideally the platform should provide. I mean, obviously you can kind of code around these things, but in general, like, it would be good if the web platform did the right thing by default. And I'm not exactly sure who's to blame here. Is it the iOS or is it Safari, or is it the CSS spec? Probably different in different situations. But in general, I think the philosophy of like should be not broken by default, or the easiest thing should, the right thing should be the easiest thing to do, and
right.
Like the wrong thing should be the hard thing to do, is right. And probably in the case of jumping buttons, that is a little flipped around.
It's just an easy thing to fix if you're a programmer, is just to not enable any of your UI until it's fully formed, and if the user has to wait for that, that's a good thing, I think.
Yeah, as long as they can see it.
As long as they can see it.
As long as sometimes when it's not fully formed, it looks formed, and you just don't know.
Right.
You're in an intro state.
Spinny button.
You want to pull out one to debate. This goes all the way back to the Node days too. It's promises and async coding in general for JavaScript. I mean, this scripting language that was supposed to be very linear and just part of helping render a page, and it's grown into this crazy thing. But we need async programming. Like that, to me, was a battle. I don't know where you fall on this, Ryan. I think you talked about promises right at the beginning of Node.
Yeah, promises were in a very, very early version of Node. I took them out because I was worried about the garbage collection pressure that creating mini objects created. But clearly that was a mistake. It was long before there was like a spec for promises. So we were kind of inventing the API for it. But I mean, it's a pretty straightforward API, and
it is now.
It is back then too. I mean, you have an object, you have a callback attached to that object. Right. Yeah, I mean, I'm glad that it's been spec'd out now, and there's like a clear way of doing async programming. And of course, in Deno now, like all the APIs are very much promise based, and that just makes everything much nicer with like async await. Async await back in Node development times was in a crazy idea that nobody could actually imagine coming to pass, and those compiler guys made it happen. It's like it's a fantastic kind of sugar on the syntax to on top of kind of promises to allow async await.
And that's, you talk about TypeScript, async await, that's Sanders as well, right? Like they got that thing to work in C#, and it really seemed to propagate after that. Was that 2010? Yeah. Is it?
Yeah. I don't know the origin of where that came from.
Yeah, that's it. Anders Hallsberg.
That's the one. You made it when the C++ guys want to implement it. Like
John Skeet from Google was smitten with async await so much that he reverse engineered it and figured out how it worked. We did a DNR TV on that, and it was just amazing.
Imagine wanting to do this, but the concept is simple. The implementation is the hard part. When do you abandon the socket, the holder? Like I've been awaiting, but it's never getting here. Now what? Like there is a sense here, like you said, of the garbage collection angle. It's when is this a dead package? Like it's never going to arrive. And how do you cope with that?
I mean, my primary programming language is actually not JavaScript. It's Rust.
Right.
And Rust's implementation of async await is just fantastic, right? I mean, the answer to that question, of course, is like you have some sort of timer object. You can wrap the promise or the future in Rust with something that times out and has a deadline to it. all of that stuff can be structured very, very nicely in Rust and compiles down to like, just the tightest assembly code possible. And it's just a fantastic language to work in.
Now, I've heard it described as the modern C++. Like it's
absolutely.
It's the low level language you want to use. Well, Rasinovich is on board. Like pieces of Windows are being rewritten in it. Pieces of Azure are being written in it. Like it's going into places where it matters.
Yeah. I will never start a new C++ project. That's for sure.
You're done. Huh?
I wonder what Kate Gregory thinks of Rust. It's really cool to hear our worlds colliding, that it's just one big ecosystem of software development and we're all learning from each other. I like that. Can't we all just get along?
Nice. Because you didn't start out with Rust for Deno, right? Wasn't it originally a Go project?
Very, very early, like the first. So I did this demo for this 10 things I hate about Node talk. And I spent like 30 days, putting the demo together in Go. I had been playing around with Go plus V8 for years before that, kind of looking for ways that you could restructure a JavaScript VM. And kind of, just through the tools that I had handy together. But Go has a garbage collector, as does V8, right? Go has a runtime. And, in a complex system like a JavaScript runtime, like you need to control everything you can. Like you really need to, you cannot have like GC randomly popping up in the background. V8 obviously has the GC and will randomly pop up in the background, but like, let's leave it to one. Let's not have two. So, I think Rust was a bit of a leap in 2019 I think that's
pretty
when we
early
made
on
that decision. But it's paid off greatly. Like it's just fantastic to be able to build on Rust, build on top of, we have a wrapper around V8 that exposes essentially the same C++ API that V8 uses in Rust, but memory safe and really structured.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, we kind of layer all of our Deno stuff. And what's great is actually C++, the syntax is fine. I mean, pointers. I don't find that so problematic. Like the fact that it's not memory safe. It's the build system that's really a problem. Like the fact that you just can't pull in dependencies that, you got to kind of wrangle CMake and make and autoconf and all sorts of stuff. And it just becomes a real headache to be able to pull in external code. In Rust, in modern languages, like, there's a
package manager and there's a pipeline and
there's a package. Yeah, exactly. You can just add in dependencies and that allows us to just go so much faster.
And Kernighan and Ritchie made C to be the cross-platform language, right? I mean, that's
back in the day.
Back in the day, that was the promise. And C++, certainly, I mean, it was cross-platform for a while.
It was supposed to be the safe version.
Yeah, right?
Safe. My mistake when I first saw this was Golang and V8. Duh, they're both Google. They should love each other. I just don't know they do.
Yeah, I think they have nothing to do with each other.
Yeah, I think that's fair. That's very fair. But to talk about Rust in 2019, that's challenging. Those are early days.
Yeah, maybe even 2017. I don't know. Even know.
Yeah, no kidding. So in the end, we're still, in a lot of ways, I feel like Deno's got that same sort of philosophy of just what you need to build a web resource or whatever your project needs. Am I wrong there? Like, I don't think your philosophy's changed much.
So in Node, you need to know a lot about the ecosystem to really get ramped up, right? Node is the runtime, but you need to add on your TypeScript compiler. You need to add on your linter. You need to know that prettier is the way that you code format. You need to know how to set up a project structure. In Deno, the entire tool chain is literally an executable, right? There's a Deno.exe that you can install on your Windows computer that has everything in it, right? It's a single file distribution. And this has the code formatting, Deno format subcommand. It has very much inspired by Go, of course. It has a Deno lint subcommand. It has obviously the runtime execution. It has type checking, Deno check to type check TypeScript. All of this is kind of packaged together and thought about cohesively, so that maybe for the advanced Node programmer, maybe not a huge difference, because they kind of know how to operate in this world.
They assembled the same set of tools themselves.
Yeah.
I would also see an advanced Node developer going, hey, you're making choices I want to make myself.
Sure. Yeah. But for, the C# developer who's coming to JavaScript, or just, doesn't, like many people, hates JavaScript, but is forced to work in it for whatever reason. Somebody coming from Java, or just people less steeped in Nodisms. It's pretty great to be able to be like, here's your Deno.exe file, run Deno help and get started, right? And you probably already know JavaScript, but more or less. We have the Deno LSP that hooks into VS Code. So like, get all your IntelliSense and tab completion stuff working out of the box. You'll get the code formatting kind of happening. And it's just a delightful experience, which for a scripting language, like I said, I'm a Rust programmer. My programming Rust is not as delightful as JavaScript, but the reason that you might work I like Rust, of course, because you can write fast code. You can control exactly what the CPU is going to execute. But there's a time and place for scripting languages where you just want to move fast. And when you're moving fast, like, let's remove all the BS. Like, let's focus on. Let's just get to the scripting language. Like, who wants to set up, spend a bunch of time setting up a project structure for a freaking scripting language? I'll do that for C++ because, like, there's some benefit that I'm getting there. But I'm working a scripting language, for God's sakes. Let's make it easy to use.
Yeah, it's not just a scripting language anymore, Ryan. I don't know if you'd noticed, but it's been up to stuff. I do like the tagline, uncomplicate JavaScript, but I almost feel like it's more uncomplicate web dev.
Sure. I mean, JavaScript, that's the core of web dev, uncomplicate TypeScript as well. TypeScript, traditionally, you have to have your tsconfig.json, set a bunch of configurations. People have complained that it's not one language, but like a suite of languages, depending on which different options you're enabling.
Yeah.
We make all those choices for you. I mean, you can drop in your tsconfig, but like Deno is zero config. Like, literally just open a file, pull in an npm dependency, no package JSON, no necessity to do anything else.
It seems far more opinionated than Node ever was.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Like, Node kind of left you open for, and in some ways left you wandering in the desert. Like, do you know what bits to light up first? So like you work through some tutorials to try and get anything to run at Node at first, where this one's going, nah, we do it this way. Here you go.
I mean, I think, I don't regret this, but I mean, I think this is a result of me stepping away from the project, right? Had I stayed in the project, I would have been very opinionated and dictated things. Node is a democracy, and is a kind of free democracy. That's nice in many ways, but it also means, it goes in all sorts of different directions, and there's not necessarily hard decisions being made. Deno makes hard decisions, and people, violently disagree with us sometimes. Sure. But, it does kind of result in, frankly, zero config, very little boilerplate. And I think that is absolutely delightful for people who, the majority who just do not give a crap about a lot of those decisions.
And you can change the default configuration if you want to, right? I mean, nobody's saying that this is the way everything must be done. Yeah. It's just the default convention over configuration.
That's right. Yeah. So the principle with Deno is like, you can start with a single file. You don't need to have a package JSON or a project structure. Like, literally a single file is all you need to get started. You can go pretty far with that, but you can, of course, have a Deno.json to set configurations. You can have a tsconfig. You can set configurations in there. You can have a package JSON. a big part of what we're doing with Deno 2 is kind of scaling Deno up to more complex project structures because, frankly, there's a lot of people out there with very large JavaScript code bases. And
for sure.
We want to make sure that Deno scales to support very complex setups as well.
Okay. Talk to me about the difference between Deno and Deno Fresh.
So Fresh is a web framework built on top of Deno. So Deno's the runtime. Fresh is a way of doing React-y sort of websites. So it has kind of server-side rendering of JSX React style JavaScript, and it has it's designed to be very fast. Has a pretty simple structure with a technique called islands, where you kind of segment your client side code with your server side code. It is a full stack web framework, meaning that you write client side and server side code, which frankly is a great way to build websites. That is the benefit of JavaScript, is that you can kind of share code between the two sides. And by default, you can kind of build static websites. So by default, like you can write a bunch of React code. Actually, it uses Preact, but same thing for all intents and purposes. You can write a bunch of server side React code. And it'll just render to a static site, and there will actually be no client-side JavaScript. But as necessary, if you need to add on interactive bits, you can kind of pull those in pretty easily, and generally follows kind of Deno's philosophy of zero config, zero boilerplate. It feels really simple and nice to use.
And is it obvious what should be client, what should be server? Or do you get in any debates of where any stuff needs to live? I guess you can switch if you want to.
I mean, if you have a button that changes color when you click on it or whatever, then
save the server trip.
Client side.
Yeah. So it's always a question mark once the code's living in two places. Like, do I need to pick? How big of a deal is this? But fairly open.
I think it's usually pretty clear, but I guess in kind of the limit when you get into very complicated applications, maybe it gets a little tricky.
Should be apparent most of the time, but once in a while you're going to get a question. So 2.0 is imminent. What makes you do a new version number? Like, what are you thinking?
So like I said, we are kind of working on scaling up to bigger, more complex JavaScript and TypeScript projects. So big thing that's happening in Deno 2 is that we can essentially execute any Node project now. Modern Node projects, you do need to use ESM, like ECMAScript module syntax, not require, but import. But you should be able to drop into any kind of modern-ish Node project and use Deno to execute the code. In Deno itself, whether you're in kind of a Node project or not, you can pull in NPM dependencies pretty nicely. And we've also introduced this new package registry called JSR, where people can publish JavaScript and TypeScript code. And it is... Well, I don't know how much you guys interact with NPM, but post GitHub acquisition, NPM is really not changing at all. And that is kind of a shame for the world's most popular programming language, where there's like vibrant, exciting, creative things happening. Publishing to NPM is still very much stuck in the CommonJS era.
Yeah,
it's really hard for people to figure out how to take TypeScript and compile it down and publish it for different situations. And frankly, we live in a world that is not just Node now. There's a number of runtimes. There's Node, of course, but Deno and Bun and Cloudflare workers and browsers, of course. So JSR is a modern package registry for JavaScript and TypeScript that makes it just delightful to publish. Adds, say, for example, auto-generated documentation for consumers of these modules, and is cross-platform, like can work with all of these different runtimes.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that about NPM, because on one hand, when GitHub acquired it, you're like, oh, good, it's safe now. We won't have to worry anymore. It doesn't have to figure out how to make money or any of those sorts of things. It's now living in that big ecosystem. But like there's inertia. I wonder if they lost key people, like that there's just, they're afraid to do much to NPM.
I think it's hard to change anything because it's so large at this point, and there's no real business there. I mean, that was always the problem with NPM as a company, that like they couldn't figure out the business. And so I think, it's safe. That's a good thing.
Package managers in general aren't a business. We all need them.
Right.
None of us will pay for them.
Yes. I totally agree. Which is, by the way, is why JSR is kind of a completely open source, unlike NPM is completely open source. And although I'm managing it right now, the Deno company is managing it. It is aims to be a kind of public service, and I hope to put it into a foundation of some sort.
That's good.
I'll have to check that out. Coming from NuGet, in the ease of which I can use that in my environment, NPM was a real kind of learning curve for me. So I'm hoping this is going to be nicer. And it sounds like it already is.
It's super delightful to
great.
use. Yeah.
That's the way it should be.
I don't know. The perfect package manager is one I never think about. It just does what I needed to do.
Yeah.
And it's the moment it pops up and interrupts me, looking at you, NuGet.
Yeah.
Then it's wrong, right? Like that's a problem.
Sometimes you do want to make sure that you're not getting the newer version that isn't compatible with another package that isn't compatible with another. I mean, you do kind of need that control, but assuming.
Speaking of like never needing a package manager, like in Deno 2, if you want to pull in an NPM dependency, for example, a common one is Express, kind of a web, simple web framework. You can just import npm :express. Like you don't need to do kind of an npm add or create a package JSON. You can really kind of scale down your stuff and just have these kind of single line imports that define the version and Deno knows how. Deno included in the Deno exe single file is a package manager. It knows how to pull down the npm dependencies, and you don't have this problem of having a node modules folder in your local project. Maybe you want that. That's an option, of course, but generally it stores these things in a global cache. And so, it has a generally clean feel to it.
So when Deno is done and you're on that trajectory again and you're looking around and saying, I think I want to go on to the next thing. Do you have something in mind that you want to do that you can share with us?
I was just saying to my wife earlier today that like I want to return to my Pinterest app and get this social network going, because damn it, I hate Pinterest. It's so terrible.
Yeah, I need it too.
Don't you kind of need it? I have a lot of random ideas that I would love to pursue.
Random idea manager.
Some of them I pursue with Deno. We just released this JavaScript trademark open letter a couple of days ago, which is kind of a pet project of mine, fighting Oracle for. Did you know that Oracle owns the JavaScript trademark?
Oh, yeah.
And I hate them.
And why do they own it? And how confusing that is? And especially for people who have something called the Deno JavaScript runtime. It's just very annoying. A lot of fun undertakings. I continue to do.
I'm thinking there's a little sarcasm in that word "fun" coming out of your mouth there.
But there is a whole initiative going on to try and get them to just surrender the trademark. Like, you're not doing anything with it. It's not important to you. Heck, you barely pay attention to Java.
Right.
Why you have the JavaScript trademark as well? Like, just it makes everything confusing. Yep. It's just because Sun registered it at the time. Not that it was important to them or any of those things.
I mean, the Java trademark might actually be important because that is something that they continue to develop and presumably have a business around. I'm not against trademarks, of course, but it is the JavaScript one is very problematic. You can check out this open letter that I'm writing. So I'm planning on filing. I just learned about this process a couple of months ago.
Mm-hmm.
I'm planning to file a petition with the USPTO, the Patent and Trademark Office, to cancel Oracle's JavaScript trademark because I think it is actually invalid as defined in the U.S. code, and I go through that in this open letter.
Wow.
I think next month we'll actually file this.
Great. I mean,
Good for you.
they should actually just release it and try and make themselves look like the good guy. But it is Oracle. There's not a lot of good guy there.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's hold open source developers' feet to the fire so that they can't use our trademark.
Nice.
Stupid.
There's nothing they could do with it that would be useful in any way.
Or profitable for them, right? What's the point?
Yeah, I think the best thing they could do is release it and get the goodwill for it. But as Brian Cantrell has said, don't anthropomorphize the lawnmower. Oracle being the lawnmower.
The lawnmower that collects his licensing fees along the way.
Oh, man.
A licensing strategy known as, so how much money do you have?
Yeah, right.
All right.
The leaf sucker.
Hey, Ryan, so much fun to talk to you. Thanks so much for all the great work you do. It's really a pleasure.
And it was delightful talking to you as well. Great.
Thanks. Yeah, it's fun.
All right. And we'll talk to you, dear listener, next time on .NET Rocks. .NET Rocks is brought to you by Franklin's Net and produced by Pwop Studios, a full-service audio, video, and post-production facility located physically in New London, Connecticut, and of course in the cloud. Online at pwop.com. Visit our website at dotnetrocks.com for RSS feeds, downloads, mobile apps, comments, and access to the full archives going back to show number 1, recorded in September 2002. And make sure you check out our sponsors. They keep us in business. Now go write some code. See you next time.